How goes it, future gods? Michael Phillip here. I just wanted to let you know that I have been stockpiling podcast extras over at patreon.com/third eye drops. We have got bonus riffs with shamans, scientists, biohackers, and artists, and the collection is just going to keep growing, my friends, and it's already shaping up to be a tasty little interdisciplinary technodelic mouth noise repository as it is. So if you dig this, grab a little technodermic dessert and support the show by going to patreon.com/third eye drops. Much love.
Third eye drops are intended for open-minded adults. Now administering third eye drops.
Get up.
Stay in bed.
Do it.
Wait a little while.
Make the call.
Call later.
Make the video.
Watch another episode.
Work on the podcast.
Keep scrolling through Facebook.
That was an approximation of the psychic tug of war happening in my mindscape today. Those were all choices I either made or failed to make, though I guess regardless of if I failed to make the choice, I still made a choice, but it was the wrong one. So often we do this. We get in this self-referential negotiation script that runs in our minds, and the only difference between our success and failure, or our action and inaction, is an extremely flimsy barrier between doing or not doing. And as insignificant as that may seem, it can be a life-altering difference. And perhaps I'm oversimplifying this into some dualistic binary paradigm that's more complicated, because I am a man of nuance. I am a gray area, middle path denizen most of the time. But sometimes you go to the gym or you don't. Sometimes you try the new thing or you don't. And the thing is that these decisions ripple, wonderlings. They set a domino rally of circumstances off. And yes, many times the result of our decisions are fairly innocuous. You're not always going to get fireworks because you did the right thing. But sometimes that choice of doing creates an emanation. It strikes some sort of fortuitous cosmic harmony. Maybe it results in you meeting someone, getting an opportunity. You just don't know until you do it. I mean, it makes sense. Until you disrupt the recursive loop of everyday life with a dice roll, the sweet lady of cosmic fortuity will not bestow you with 777s. That is not how novelty works. And actually, this brings me to J.P. Sears, because the only reason you know him is due to the fact that he is a dice roller. We get into the exact circumstances that led to his creative and entrepreneurial leaps of faith and the emergence of his now massively popular ultra spiritual character, which, if you somehow don't know, is this self-deprecating caricature of himself that is also kind of a perfect anthropomorphization of everything New Age, and it just really resonates with people to the point where I actually recall seeing that first ever ultra spiritual video and thinking to myself, yes, this is so perfect, like to a level where it felt almost as if I had seen it before or something. You know what I mean? When you see something and you swear, oh, this has been around for a while, right? Whenever I have that feeling, I think to myself, damn, this is really smacking the bullseye. And I've got to say, if you've just seen his videos, you might not know, he's not just a satire act. He is a thoughtful, disciplined man. He actually does a lot of therapeutic work with people as well. He's got levels, folks, and we certainly spelunk into them in this mind meld. awakenwithjp.com is the website. He's also got a book, How to Be Ultra Spiritual, which I will let him explain.
I had an instant knowing that I needed to write this book. It wasn't even me thinking that I needed to write it. It was a knowing, and I knew that it was a knowing. People have been prancing around in the child's play pastures of spirituality for long enough. It's time for humanity to awaken to the greener pastures of the ultra-spiritual realm. So yeah, How to Be Ultra Spiritual is a free-range grass-fed book. It's also gluten-free, organic, shade-grown, fair trade, and 100% vegan-friendly. It's the only book of its kind.
Amen. And of course, we shall commence with said semantic spelunking momentarily. But first, all the gratitude to those of you supporting this show, especially our spectacular crowd funders at patreon.com/Third Eye Drops. As I mentioned, we have got a number of patron-only podcast extras that I have personally brined in the wondergasms of shamans from every continent on the planet Earth, including Antarctica. That one took a while, but it was worth it. The patina, the Antarctic patina, it's very unique. Also at patreon.com, depending on your pledge level, you will get rewards as well as access to that exclusive content and community. Join us, my friends, patreon.com/Third Eye Drops. You can also support us in several ways at thirdeyedrops.com. For instance, next time you're going to make a purchase on Amazon, you can click our link located on the right-hand side of thirdeyedrops.com before doing so, and it will give us a little referral bump. We've also got a store of our own with a few shirts left in stock. You will also find all of our mind melds, of course, at thirdeyedrops.com. And omnidirectional aura snuggles to all of you that have looked up Third Eye Drops on iTunes or Apple Podcast or whatever they're calling it these days and clicked 5 stars and subscribe. You are truly lovely. As are our friends at MindPod Network and TimeWheel.net.
Hit it!
Begin symbiosis.
All right, man. Well, on that note, I guess we'll call this rolling, and I'll start by saying it's really refreshing to have another fully awakened being on the show because, you know, I'm talking to these professors and scientists and philosophers, and they have, like, you know, they always have like a piece of the puzzle, like they have like the intellectual part figured out, but they don't have, you know, the heart-centered subjective part figured out. So it's great to be on equal footing for once, man.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, I'm sorry that you normally have to deal with like intelligent people with like these well-developed intellects. I mean, to me, it's, you know, in a much more practical light, having complete cosmic consciousness is it's always a pleasure to deal with when I have the experience to interact with someone like yourself. So I'm glad we're not intelligent, but we can be more fully cosmic conscience.
Yeah, we're essentially just the cosmic mirror playing a game of Pong with enlightenment. It's just like I'm shooting it to you, you're shooting it back to me. And I guess we should let people know too, there's also from the outside looking in, you don't really know that there are different levels of enlightenment. Like you know, people think you become enlightened like kind of like you become a black belt. You know, you get your enlightenment guru form, and then people think it's dumb or done rather, or both, probably both.
Yeah.
But then there are levels of wokeness beyond enlightenment, and I wonder. On that note, then I wonder which one of our cosmic mirrors is shinier. is like, I guess I would have to know your daily routine, which I guess you were about to tell me just a moment ago with your smoothie.
Well, yeah. Hopefully, I qualify to be a clear reflection in the cosmic mirror, assessed by yourself. But yeah, my daily routine. I like to drink probably about 9 inches deep worth of a smoothie. I don't even care what's in it, as long as it has at least a couple powders. Doesn't matter what they are. But yeah, my my daily routine. In my old age, Michael, I have come to find a large amount of liberation through the structure of a routine. And I think anything that's structured, taken to the nth degree or an extreme, it can become a prison. But finding our place of balance with a structure, me finding my place of balance with the structure of a routine, it creates essentially a launch pad where I don't have to think about what am I going to do in the morning. It's like the mundane tasks are on autopilot, and a lot of the mundane tasks are also intentionally designed to essentially wake me up, as kind of the theme of our lives, woke, but wake me up, excite me, enliven me, and challenge me mentally, emotionally, physically, so that I can spill into my day, my creativity, with essentially more of my circuitry alive.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same way. If I don't have a really well-defined structure, I'm somebody who I test the limits of everything, man. I'm one of those people who pushes my productivity to the limit of nothing being accomplished almost every day. Like I'm like a nighttime worker, and a daytime just completely somebody who procrastinates pretty incessantly unless I have a hard guideline. And that's exactly how I combat it, is I have to create these constraints. And my girlfriend's the exact opposite. She's an extremely analytical, like she wakes up and if she wants to clean, she starts cleaning. And I'm the total opposite. So does that come naturally for you, being a routine-based person, or is that something you've had to mindfully implement into your life?
Yeah, I've had to mindfully implement it, and a lot of trial and error, and many years, essentially, not to sound overly dramatic, but suffering the consequences of not having routines. It's like that just wasn't on my radar, and especially when I was in my free-spirited phase, like, wow, a routine, man, that's no good. Why would I want to do the same thing over and over again? It's like, well, so it's a structure for the new, so it's a structure for the creative. So yeah, I've had to take a long time to figure out, like, a routine is actually a thing, and it can be a good thing. I just have to find the pieces that work for me, and then a lot of experimenting to find what works for me. And man, now when I'm without my routines, which when I travel, which is pretty frequently, a lot of times the routine goes out the window, and man, I feel it. It's like I become I wouldn't say a temperamental child, but I feel like sometimes an ADD child who doesn't have the same stupid bedtime story read to them every day and the same routine in the morning. So, man, they really help me.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I was just on a trip recently as well. And I don't have a super hard dietary routine, but there are certain just lines in the sand I draw. Like, I'm a pretty consistent intermittent faster. I usually don't eat breakfast. I'll do, the bulletproof style coffee in the morning. And then I'll try to do low carb-ish type eating throughout the day. But my main thing is trying to eat in that sort of 8-hour intermittent fasting window. And when you travel, it's so difficult to do if you don't prepare and pack stuff with you. I was doing this event with another guy who does, quote unquote, biohacking type stuff. And he travels with like suitcases filled with stuff. And I sort of just mentally prepare to go off the rails for a few days.
Yeah.
What do you do? Do you pack stuff to try to have at least some modicum of staying on your routine, or do you just kind of let it fly?
Yeah, I'm a little bit of an in-betweener. The idea of traveling with a crap load of stuff, it's like, all right, that's one step forward because it's like, I got all my stuff, all my freaking smoothie powders and stay on my routine. But then it's like, well, now I've got all this crap I'm lugging around. And I'm sort of like minimalism by nature. So I'd rather go off the rails in a good way. And sometimes that means just go without. And also, a lot of times, wherever I'm going, there's going to be a Whole Foods within a close distance. So that makes it kind of easy. But, when I'm on an airplane, like I have a super early morning flight tomorrow, part of what helps me is much like yourself. I do intermittent fasting every day and start my day with bulletproof coffee. So that makes early morning flights kind of easy. It's like, well, I wasn't going to eat anyway. But I also have some decent, like, organic food type bars that I'll have with me. So inevitably, when I do get hungry, I can have a decent snack. But man, to me, the most frustrating thing about airports is my mentality in them. It's like at each of the airports I go to, I'm sure I've been in at least 10 times, but my mentality is like this beginner's mind, like, oh, I wonder if they have anything that I can eat. It's like, no, I was just hearing at the Atlanta airport last week, and I know the crappy food selection, but I just get amused by this weird optimism I have. Like, maybe they put in something awesome.
Yeah, I do that too. I'm like an explorer. I like to go all the way down to the end of the terminal, even if I don't have to. I got to be like, well, what if there's just something around that corner that's going to blow my mind, even though I intellectually know it's going to be the same 12 options that it always is in an airport. But I'm with you. I have the exact same mindset. Do you find it, like, I find it particularly difficult to levitate on the road, like I'll wake up, I'll start my meditation routine, I'll do my 27 rounds of Wim Hof style pranayama, and I feel like it takes me an extra round or two to, like, really, before I start my levitation.
Yeah, when I'm on the road, I feel shy about levitating because inevitably, like, I'm not going to do it in the privacy of a home or a hotel. I'm going to be doing my meditations out in a park where everybody can see me. And then,
during your sermon.
Yeah.
So,
that everybody wants to listen to. But, so levitating in front of new people, you get all these questions like, wow, like, when did you reach complete enlightenment? And it's like, well, I want you to notice me, but I don't want you to bother me with your questions, is sort of my approach when I'm out in public with my meditation ability. So a lot of times I'll just leave levitation as part of the routine for home only.
Yeah. People don't understand that being really dismissive of questions is also a huge part of wokeness. As did you on that note, did you see that video that seems to just be going around all of the sort of, new age countercultural channels of Jim Carrey being on the red carpet and just being very, like, I don't know what the right word is, like, mischievously poking fun at the whole event that he's at, but then also using these sort of, like, high-minded spiritual, like, sort of spiritual philosophical platitudes about the nature of reality and how everything is useless. Because if that's what wokeness is, I don't know. Have you seen that video?
No, I've seen it come up on my feed. Probably at least 20 times, if not more than that. But I haven't clicked watch. I've had people tell me about it, and it sounds interesting. I don't know why I haven't watched it, but I will check that out.
The reason I bring it up is because the thing that I found interesting about it is he's clearly alluding to a lot of things that I'm interested in and that have piqued, my curiosity, but it's just so dismissive, and it's very kind of hierarchically informed the way he's speaking to this correspondent from whatever channel she's from, but it's like widely being celebrated for him, shining a light on the the supposed bullshit of this fashion event. And
Yeah.
it's just, whenever I have been around to be, or whenever I have been lucky enough to be around these more earnestly authentic explorer type human beings who really are doing their best to find a ontologically meaty path in life and help other people do the same, it's never toned that way. It's always toned in a much humbler way. And
Yeah.
I think in your own way, you're a great example of that, because you are, your whole, I don't want to use the word shtick, but it's very self-deprecating. It's very self-aware and very putting yourself on the chopping block before anyone else. And that's what attracted me to you. And that's what drives me so crazy about this community in general, is there's this very, people can't seem to resist the temptation to take another step up above everybody else if they have the opportunity to. So I don't know if this is really a question, but I'll transmute it into a question. So the question is when did you realize that was an effective way to communicate with people, sort of this self-deprecating style that you developed?
Well, I think and I love the question. I think I realized it after I was doing it. And what led me to do it in the first place wasn't this like high intelligent sense of this will be an effective way to communicate with people. It was like, no, it was just the way I was doing it, probably because, I had and still do sort of live with this spiritual mindset for a long time. I had become aware of a ton of BS, the ego agendas involved in my spiritual practice, and how the ego agendas were hidden underneath the trump card of this is a spiritual practice. It's not ego-based. Well, it can be both for sure.
Absolutely.
So because my videos started to they started as, and I think they still are, a practice of self-awareness. It was just already all about me. And then I think in hindsight, it's actually really nice to get a lot of feedback about like the self-deprecation makes it more digestible. And I like that. And I think really one of the reasons why I like it, why I get feedback that a lot of other people like it, is because there's the ethos of respect involved in what I'm quote unquote making fun of. I wouldn't make fun of it if I didn't respect it. Like case in point, I have I think I can make a really funny video about Scientology.
Right.
But I won't do that because, I wish I didn't have to say this, but to be honest, I don't respect Scientology. So I don't want to put something out there that, is just like, oh, I could get millions of views with it, make people laugh, make them think that I'm smarter or funnier at the expense of putting out more condescending, unrespectful messages into the world. So it's important for me to have a relationship of respect with what I'm doing comedy on. And to me, respect is about embracing the whole of someone or a subject. To me, disrespect is only seeing part of it. And I think some people who take themselves too seriously, and I do in some regards, certainly, we disrespect what we take so seriously because we're only willing to look at the light side of it. It's like we disrespect the shadow side so much that we're going to pretend it's not there. And then we live under the, I think, facade of respect with our relationship with that philosophy, whatever it is. But I think it's truly disrespectful. Or other people like, well, just looking at the shadow side of Scientology. Like, yeah, that's a disrespectful relationship. But if I can see the light side and shadow side, so do my best to see the whole of what something is, then to me, that's actual respect. and I can talk about both sides because I see both. I'm not pretending that the light side doesn't exist or the shadow side doesn't exist. I'm acknowledging they're both there.
Yeah, and you have to develop that kind of nuance, I think, especially now. Otherwise, you're in this binary thinking that has made us such a sick culture. Like, I was just having this conversation the other day about how early the precedent is set, especially in the United States, where the only type of thinking you're aware of is a binary type of thinking. Like, there is no gray area. It's like politically, there's two options.
Man, it's ridiculous.
And when you think that way, like any other first world country I can think of, Canada, Australia, Europe, Japan, whatever, they have
Wisconsin.
These, right,
one of my favorite first world countries.
They've developed these political paradigms that rely on cooperation. Like, you can't get a bill passed with a singular, all-powerful political alignment that's currently in power. You have to cooperate, and we don't have that here. So it's win or lose. It's you're either on the side of the winner or you're on the side of the loser. And I think that trickles down into the way we interact with one another. It has this effect where the other becomes this sort of subhuman opponent that's really just like a philosophical opponent rather than another human being, and that has huge implications for everything, especially now with communicating via channels where people are already kind of dehumanized because they're just an avatar, right? They're not a human being, and you can sort of just take on your own online persona and not have to worry about being a human being most of the time. So avoiding that low-hanging fruit that you're talking about, avoiding that kind of pandering that can be sort of think about how much conflict-based clickbait there is out there. Just clickbait that's designed to stir up controversy. I mean, we could get, like you're saying, we could get millions and millions of views with these things, and it's very tempting to travel that left-hand path. But so at what point was this like a conscious decision that you were going to do self-deprecating content and pick at things that you yourself like only, or did you just come to a crossroads at some point and you're like, I'm not going to do that?
Yeah, it was a slow, progressive build-up. It wasn't a decision. When I made my first comedy video called How to Be Ultra Spiritual, at the time I thought I was just going to make a one-time comedy video. And it wasn't until a couple weeks after that fact that I thought, well, that was actually pretty satisfying. Maybe I could make another comedy video. So yeah, those just kept going, and it just, doing my best to follow the guidance of my heart, it just felt good to do things that had been near and dear to me in my life. So that's important. And I'm also a fan of believing nothing is as it seems. And I think it just going back to what you talked about with the binary thinking, which is the easiest way to think because it doesn't involve much thinking at all. Mm-hmm. So when we look at like ourselves, like I have this point of view, you have this point of view, and of course we're fighting with each other. You're wrong, I'm right. The other person saying you're wrong, I'm right. It's like, okay, let's keep doing this longer. We don't realize that, you see it this way, I see it this way, and we're both probably wrong. There's a real good chance we're both probably wrong. So I believe in binary thinking as well as just taking a look at my own beliefs. It's a really good idea to have beliefs, but not believe our beliefs. And a little mantra I have that helps me, and it really is a mantra of humbleness, helps lessen the load of arrogance in me. I've still got arrogance, but it helps lessen the load. And the mantra says, all people are full of crap all of the time, and it's okay. That it's okay part is a very essential part of the mantra. I am full of crap all of the time, and it's okay. I think when we're full of crap, but we're not okay with it, that means we're going to be blind to the fact that we're full of crap, which means we're going to have beliefs, and we're going to believe our beliefs. And that means we have this fear-based attitude that we call seriousness. To me, seriousness is in fact stemming from a fear-based mindset. Seriousness is a psychological energy of control, and it's impossible for us to physically or psychologically try to create control unless we're first afraid. Fear is a sensation of being out of control. So seriousness is an act or a mindset to try to regain a sense of control. Doesn't mean we're going to control anything, but it means we're trying to regain a sense of control. So for me, I help dissolve a little bit of the gravity of the concrete consciousness of seriousness by reminding myself all people are full of crap all of the time. And when I am incredibly certain of myself, that probably means I am the most full of crap. And I also believe that in this, to me, it has relevance with my videos and the whole binary deal of people just being unwilling to think for themselves is, I forgot what the hell I was
That's okay.
say.
That's okay.
I felt very passionate.
I think it
about
was because I was so I was psychically revved up to take that and go somewhere else with it. So I probably interrupted we became entangled, and I non-locally interrupted your thinking. But so because these, exactly what you're talking about occurs, where this sort of carapace of ideas and ego and authority goes over somebody, and to challenge their beliefs or whatever it is that they're proposing becomes like a personal insult to them, then you see all the time where, as you mentioned, you go to all these events. I've been to a few events. These people's practice, these people's science, art, whatever it is, becomes their identity to such a degree that they have to defend it from any perceived rhetorical, social, philosophical challenge. And I think that's why you have such a difficulty of saying exactly what you just said, of saying, hey, first and foremost, I'm full of shit. I'm just doing my best here, but I'm probably wrong. But here's what I think as an authentic human being. I'm just going to be vulnerable. And man, when you're at an event like that, the vibe immediately just gets so much better, because it's like it gives a cue to everybody in the audience to just sort of let their guard down, open up, and just be there with each other. And I've been to both sorts of events. Unfortunately, I feel like the type of event where, hey, these are thought leaders, listen to these people, they've got it figured out, you're just kind of a pleb in the audience absorbing this wisdom, seems to be the more common overtone, unfortunately. But when you are at an event where it's what I mentioned previously, and you're in an arena where you can just let your guard down, it's so much better. It's so much better. Sure. But do you feel like for that reason you need to say that out loud and set that precedent at events that you go to?
No. Like the message of here's what I'm doing and we're all full of crap. I mean, actually, sometimes I do say those words, but I think actions speak louder than words. So instead of telling people my point of view, I just exude my point of view with how I'll make jokes about something, how I'll make jokes about myself and self-deprecation. And to me, it actually gets the point across more than trying to literally convey the point, because the point is conveyed essentially through interpretive dance and emotion rather than linear logical thought. So, man, I think a lot of us are really comfortable with agreement-based relationships.
Yes.
Which means, man, we'll stay connected as long as we agree, because that's comfortable. But if we disagree, then we're going to disconnect, because it'll be more comfortable to be disconnected from someone who I disagree with, which fundamentally means, the reason why I'm uncomfortable in the first place is you disagree with a belief that I have that I think I am. Because I think I am this belief, I think I am this point of view, I'm identified with it. The fact that you see it differently is what creates the deep fundamental feeling of fear inside of me, that creates the offense, that creates the seriousness, that creates the combativeness, because part of me feels as though my life is threatened. If you see this differently, then the fact that I believe that I am my belief, not intellectually, I don't believe that, but somatically I believe that, then man, I have to preserve this belief or else my life will end. That's why I'm going to fight you. That's why I'll distance myself from the threat, from the he or she who believes differently than me. And to me, the quickest way to be in a living hell is identify with something that you're not. Be it a belief, an organization, a group, a thing, money, a car, a relationship. Identify with something that you're not, and that's the quickest way to be in a living hell. And that's the quickest way to make sure you don't grow psychologically, emotionally. So I think aiming for what I would call a more heart-centered way of connecting with people, not through agreement-based relationships and interactions, but through acceptance-based interactions. First off, that means we have to have a reasonable sense of self. An unreasonable sense of self is like, I am this jar, don't you dare wash it because that'll wash away who I am. Or like, this is how I see the political point of view, and don't you dare see it differently because I think I am my political point of view. So we have to have like a decent, reasonable sense of self that has at least a little something to do with who we are, not just what we think, not what we do, not the roles we play. And then what we can actually do is accept people instead of agreeing with them. So someone sees something similar to us, another person sees something very different than us, and we accept them both without this dogmatic Hitler-like need to try to change their mind, without coming as though we're fighting for our life. It's like, no, them seeing something different than us has nothing to do with threatening our life. In fact, it's probably enhancing our life. Having different points of view, especially opposing points of view, that's how we grow. That's how we get smarter. That's how we actually open our minds more, if we're willing to have a curious attitude rather than a dogmatic level of certainty that just comes out in this control-based seriousness that stems from our fear-based mindset. So I think when we aren't identified with what we believe and buying into the delusional certainty that our minds create, then we can be less identified with what we're not, and therefore connect with people deeper at an acceptance-based level rather than an agreement-disagreement-based level.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what you just said is beautiful, of course, and I completely intellectually agree with all of that. And it's funny that you're talking about these agreement-based relationships and conversations that people gravitate toward, because I make this joke all the time that so many interview podcasts, including my own, are basically just again a game of ping pong between not enlightenment as we were alluding to earlier, unfortunately, but of yeah man, oh for sure, oh yeah,
and yeah, tell me again what we believe. Yeah, so comfortable to have that reaffirmed.
But to play devil's advocate, because so many people like you held up your jar before, I think a vessel like that is a perfect metaphor, because so many people are just eager to find whatever that vessel is so they can just completely merge with it. Like, you ever have a conversation with somebody who within 5 minutes you can tell that whatever this worldview is like, they don't understand that it's part of an outfit they're wearing. It's like if it were a pair of glasses they're using to see the world, they would be fused into their face. And it's like, do you know that like the Fox News talking points are not actually fused with your biology? You could consider some other ideas and not first think about, well, as a blah, 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 what do I think about that? You can just be a human first and connect with this other sentient being on a human level, and then start trying to exercise some nuance about how you think your ideas might differ or something. So in those situations, let's say it's an even more extreme situation where it's not just a political, philosophical thing, but it's something that's just purely awful. Somebody trying to be like, well, I still think white people are better, or just something, very cartoonish. How then do you deal with that from a heart-centered perspective, because unfortunately that is a real conversation that's happening right now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think there's a couple dimensions to how I would approach that. In practically speaking, one of the dimensions is boundaries. I don't want to associate and spend my time with people who are just going to mindlessly hate other people. So I want to have boundaries of separation. So first and foremost, I'm not going to pretend to be like, oh, let me just accept everyone. Like, no, I don't know how to accept everybody unconditionally. So I will have appropriate boundaries, whatever those would be for the situation. Yet, what acceptance for me would look like from that place, it's not saying to those people, yeah, you're right, keep doing what you're doing. Acceptance says, I want to understand why you see that way. Why do you think you're better than other people? Not from like an interrogating, shaming point of view, but curiously, like, what happened to you?
Right. That's it.
Yeah. Like, if all of our beliefs are a symptom, what caused the symptom of this belief? Was it you feeling incredibly disempowered by an oppressive father or stepfather when you were young, and therefore you're compensating for this by oppressing other people so you can feel like the almighty, powerful oppressor? I don't know, but to me, compassion would say, I want to understand. And there's also, without that heartfelt understanding, nobody's ever going to change their mind. It's like until I'm blue in the face, wow, we're all equals. But no, there's a core wound here, probably, when people have an attitude of hatred. It's funny. I think nature is the best teacher. Nature left unchecked just functions beautifully. And I think it's a beautiful teacher of how we are meant to function. It's like a North Star if we're willing to see the light of the North Star. And the way I look at it, like, nature doesn't exude hate. It exudes harmony. So I don't think hate is it's not a harmonious natural order of the nature of the life force that lives through us. So when hate is present in us, I think hate is a fingerprint. It's a symptom of a deeper imbalance. Like, what the hell's going on? Much like I won't pretend to know much about the weather and climate change, but let's just pretend overly strong hurricanes are a symptom of human-induced climate change. If we pretend that's true, then we could look at that and be like, wow, this unnaturally strong force of nature, this is a symptom of something deeper. What's going on here? And we can start to look at what are the problems we're causing. Mm-hmm. So I think hatred is like an overly strong hurricane inside of someone that isn't just naturally arising. It's arising because of something unnatural that has happened in our psyche that we haven't dealt with yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I've never met somebody who is angry for no reason, right? Even if it's like an acute anger where you can directly see, all right, I made this person angry and now they're mad about whatever I did. It's even if it's some sort of deep psychic laceration that happened to them as a child, there's something there. It could be epigenetic, it could be genetic, who knows? The possibilities are endless. But I think that's an interesting example, the climate change thing, because it's perfect in that even if you don't think what we're doing is impacting the weather and you start digging into, well, we've had ice ages before and that's a trillion times worse than what we're doing now. If you just shift that logic onto yourself and you go to the doctor and the doctor's like, hey, you've got heart disease, you're not going to sit there and argue with him if it's because you're eating cake every day or not. Like if you're eating cake every day and you have heart disease, regardless of why you have that heart disease, eating cake every day is not going to help it. And like that's kind of the conversation we're having about climate change right now is like, yeah, we're dumping tons and tons of toxic chemicals into the rivers and into the air and into every single part of nature, but I don't think that's why climate change is happening. It sort of seems like beside the point.
Yeah, and it's a crappy thing to do. Like it's almost like dumping ungodly amounts of chemicals into the river and just really evil stuff. It's like, wow, that gets a get out of jail free card if we can somehow like posture it like, well, that's not contributing to climate change. Well, that's debatable, maybe not, but it's a really crappy thing to do. So let's not just give it the get out of jail free card. It's a good thing to do because it's not causing this climate change, or you can't prove it unequivocally. So it's like, man, it's crappy. Whether it's contributing to climate change or not, my radar says that it's crappy.
No doubt. So, okay, so one of the things I eventually wanted to get into you in a fair amount of depth about is the fact that you're mostly known for your humor-based subject matter at this point. You're mostly known as this ultra-spiritual character. So do you, like, when you go to events or when you do interface with people, do you feel the need to have to dip into that? Or do you feel okay just having, straightforward conversations like we're having? Or do people, when they're booking you for something, do they say, hey, are you going to be doing comedy, or how does that conversation usually go?
Yeah, it goes different ways, and this whole thing, it's ever changing. Mm-hmm. So when I'm booked for an event, usually it's pretty clear communication. We want you to do comedy. We want you to do serious stuff, or you just stand up and be you, and like whatever. Because when I'm just being me, it's like an eclectic blend of comedy, sincerity, and it's like that's what you get. But if an event just wants like pure comedy, then that's part of the upfront discussions, and I can agree or disagree to it. So, but to me, the thing that's changed the most in the most beneficial way is the expectations I put on myself. So it used to be when I would go to an event, I would try to present what was familiar to people. Let me, when I'm on stage, let me just act like the character. In fact, I would wear the headband and flower in my hair, and it's like I'm the character. But it was this past January, so probably 10 months or so ago at this point, I was backstage about to go on at an event, had my headband on, and I knew like something doesn't feel right. It feels kind of like that sound. It felt like slightly depressed, and I didn't really know what it was, but I went on, did my thing, and then it was, I think the next week I was on my way to another event, and it just hit me, take the headband off. The headband, that character, it used to be a place of great freedom and expansion, and it was. But funny thing is, when we grow and expand, the space that was held to make us grow and expand will eventually become small. So I was finding the character used to be liberation. Now it's like a straitjacket. So unless there's a upfront agreement otherwise, when I'm at an event, I'm just going to be me. If I have a sincere, heartfelt point of view about something, I'll say it. And I won't worry about, people didn't know I could be insightful. What the hell? Like, no, why don't I just be me and stop apologizing it by withholding my heart? Or, for the first 13 years of my career, I was doing exclusively just emotional healing, client coaching work. And there I was apologizing for who I was by withholding the comedy. So it's been a bit of a hero's journey, honestly, to get to a place where it's important to me to just be me, not try to avoid part of me and only present half of me. So that's important. And I also I think my comedy is better when I'm not just being the character, because the character is a kind of a unique personality, and it's great. I still have that character essentially as a tool in the toolbox, But there's more dimensions to comedy than just the characters. So that itself felt amazing once I took the straitjacket off. Not to mention the amazingness of like, wow, these sincere parts of my heart can come out now too, on the same stage. And sometimes one sentence will be comedic, and that'll rototill the soil for a deeper penetration of a sincere point of view. The next sentence, and sometimes within the same sentence, there's satire and sincerity.
Yeah, and that's obviously the way it should be, and I think that's such a beautiful moment, because I don't that moment of you figuratively and literally taking off the headband, because like we talked about before, so many people don't understand that they're operating from the POV of a persona, like their whole professional life, their whole social life, whatever the case is, and that's a sad thing. That's a really sad thing, that you're essentially walking around with this heavy armor on all the time. You're walking around with this protective gear from anybody who thinks differently from you, challenges your authority, challenges, whatever you perceive to be fused with your identity. So I think that's a really beautiful moment, and it speaks to what everybody wants, which is to be valued for who they authentically are. And that requires a lot of disarmament. That requires a lot of unlearning, a lot of honesty, vulnerability, all of these things. So do you attribute that to anything specific, or was it just enough time spent doing that sort of act where you're like, this is just not who I am, and I want to just be who I am? Or was there something that kind of that happened, for lack of a better term?
I think it was enough time doing the ultra spiritual persona act, both on stage with live audiences and in front of the camera. Mm-hmm. And boredom is the sensation that started to get my attention. I always look at boredom as a symptom of being essentially discontented with something inside of ourselves. I don't think boredom is ever like, I'm just not doing something. It's like, no, I think we're uncomfortable with something about ourselves right now. So I started getting bored with just being the character. And I think that was call it the sensation of pain, motivating me to expand. Taking the headband off that was the straitjacket wrapped around me. It used to be like 12 sizes too big, but then it became a few sizes too small. So paying attention to the boredom, the lack of excitement and enthusiasm about it, man, because I think when we're on a growth trajectory, essentially doing something that expands us, we'll feel excited. We'll feel alive. We might hopefully feel scared too, or else it's probably not growth. But so I knew those sensations were what I needed to go after, rather than just being complacent in the coffin of boredom. Mm-hmm. And I think taking the headband off, like when it comes to our personas we're identified with, our masks, our roles, the headband was the easy one to take off. Like, it took me a while to figure out, but it's a literal headband that represents this character that part of me thought I was. And it's a part of me. But then I think the deeper lesson for me, and probably everybody can identify it with, is what are the masks that I have to take off that I don't know I'm wearing?
Exactly,
it's like when we know we're wearing a mask, when we know we're wearing a headband, it could be challenging to take it off, but still, that's the easy part. Mm-hmm, the hard part is taking off the masks that we think we are.
Yeah, and I kind of have the opposite problem, where my whole life I feel like I had a conscious why that was always with me. Like, I didn't grow up part of a particular religious affiliation, political affiliation. Like, I didn't come from a family of any things, really. It was mostly a single dad that raised me, who was working a lot. Very, very loving, but very much like a you can be whatever you want to be type of guy, which sounds fantastic, and I greatly appreciate that in many ways. But in some ways, it's also difficult because you don't have a rock. You're constantly looking for that rock. So what do I believe? What is right? Why would this religion possibly be righter than that religion? Or why would this path possibly be better than that path? And so I've sort of had the reverse, where I'm sort of trying to decide, well, what's the mask that I think feels the best on me? And when I started podcasting a few years back, that was a really important catalyst, because what it allowed me to do is do an interdisciplinary exploration of a lot of these different ideas and sort of cobble together my own thing over time. And I don't have a name for it, but I feel like I know what it is in my heart, just like for lack of a better way to say it. So for you though, you are, like you said, you've got routines, clearly a very fit, mindful, successful human being.
Clearly. Let's just emphasize that.
I'm being serious.
You're being too humble here, brother.
Yeah, you are. But so do you have a name for your practice? Do you have what are some of those rocks I was alluding to for you?
Of the routine of the self-care practice. Well, one, I definitely don't have a name for my practice.
No isms?
No, like it's not like Buddhism practices or anything. Man, it'd be cool if there was like a one-size-fits-all name to it, but I'm a big believer that what works for one person may or may not work for another person, and what does work for one person probably won't always work for that one person. I think the only thing about the human being that never changes is the fact that everything's always changing. So I would call my practices practices of non-attachment, where I'm very happy to stop doing something when it stops serving me. And like my eating practices reflect that. The one constant for probably the past 16 years is being gluten-free. That's just like, I feel better that way. Eating organic. But from there, like what I eat, man, it's changing. Like I used to be like super, like eat 30 pounds of meat in one day. I mean, not that much, but going way overboard on meat. And then like finding my balance of like my smaller portions of meat most of the time work for me. I used to eat it 3 times a day. Now I'll eat it once a day. And sometimes not even that. And if I'm working out hard, sometimes more than that. And, doing my best to pay attention to the wisdom of my body and realizing, okay, eating higher fat works well for me. And then divorcing the dogma of breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And it was to me for many years. And now, just like we were talking about earlier, I'm not eating breakfast. I do intermittent fasting. And I had a smoothie right before we got on, but typically I'm not even eating for another hour or two past that point. And then I would say like my meditation it's a very helpful thing I do and don't do. I say do and don't do because sometimes I don't do it, but I like to call them mini doses of meditation. 10 minutes works for me. 20 minutes doesn't because I don't do it. I like to be attentive to my physical being as well as my emotional being. And then also, just to pretend like I'm more well-rounded than I am, I look at some other dimensions of life, my relationships, my self-realization practices and life lessons that are coming at me, my career, all in addition to my wellness, my purpose. Those are important parts of the self-practice too. And a lot of the self-practice of career and purpose just takes the guise of like doing the work I'm doing during the day. So that's probably the most long-winded rambling way to answer the lovely question.
But I think it's a really honest answer and a probably really honest representation of what a lot of people's practices look like. Something that's like you said, not an ism. It's cobbled together from various things that are sort of cornerstones of what keeps them on the path that they're on and makes them who they are. What is your? Can I ask you what your meditation practice is like? Is it any particular style?
Yeah, it's from the Buddhist monk called Zen Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh.
Oh yeah.
And I was reading, I forget what the book was. I think he's got like 90 books.
Yeah, he's got tons of books.
Probably multiple books, but it's an incredibly simple practice where I just sit there, eyes closed, and I breathe in and out. And what I'm saying in my mind, the silent mantra is I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. So I'm just saying those words silently in my mind with each inhalation, each exhalation, and that's the meditation. And there, along the way, I mean, there's various other meditations I've tried and meditations before that, but I keep coming back to this one because it feels the best to me. This has been my regular meditation practice since, probably 2011, if not earlier than that. So a good handful of years. And to me, personally, my taste with meditation is simple as best.
Yeah.
When things start to get too complex, for me, it's like, wow, this meditation isn't very meditative. There's too many things to think about while being told not to think about anything. So F that. Let me just breathe and follow my breath.
Yeah, I think as far as just slowing the mind down for that sort of mindfulness meditation where I just need to turn down the frontal lobe and the beta and the task-based mind, that's it for me too. Just the simpler the better. Breathe in, breathe out. I've also been doing like Wim. I wasn't fully joking about the Wim Hof style
how
practice
was that?
before.
I haven't immersed myself in his stuff. I've heard tons about it, but I'm curious how it is for you.
I would list it among the most important things I've ever tried in terms of just do it and objectively see direct benefits.
And I'm curious, the direct benefits, I mean, outside of getting better at the practices that he has you do, getting better at being in the cold, holding your breath, those kind of things, what are the benefits you see in your life outside of those practices, if I'm allowed to ask?
Oh, for sure. Of course. I think 100% my immune system has gotten stronger. I've never had a particularly poor immune system, but any kind of, actually just yesterday I woke up and like my left tonsil was feeling really swollen, and normally that's kind of like, this is an onset of something. And every single time for the last year, probably something like that crops up, the next day it's just gone. It's like my immune system, whether it's my mitochondria or I don't know what it is, have just gotten better at fending off invaders or something. So that seems to be a legit positive repercussion of doing the practice. And also, man, just like if you ever try the breathing exercise, it's undeniable. And that's what I like about it, because sometimes, as you mentioned, trying to sit down for 20 minutes is just, you feel like you're just playing this game of wrestling with the monkey mind. And it's sometimes really relaxing, and sometimes you're just sitting there thinking about how much you're failing, right? Like you just keep thinking about this or thinking about that. And sometimes those things in and of themselves are beneficial, but when you do the breathing exercise, it's very black and white. Like you're either doing it or you're not doing it, right? Like you're either going or you're not. It's just there's
no like my mind is strained. I'm not meditating even though I'm sitting here. I like that.
And right away, I mean, 10, 15 breaths in, you're just physiologically really feeling the tingles and the whole thing that goes along with it. So I really like it for that reason, but it's also sometimes intimidating for that reason, because it's not as simple as just, I'm going to sit down and relax. It's like you're actually putting yourself through something when you're doing 3, 4, 5 rounds of that breathing. Like you're going to get sweaty. You're going to, you might have a, I don't know if you've ever dabbled with like plant medicine or intense breathing exercises, but a wave of something really profound might hit you in the middle, and you might just I remember hearing stories about holotropic breathing and people just having very quick flashes of like a samadhi like or satori like thing, and I always wondered if that was true. And about a month back, I had my first experience like that, where I was on the third or fourth round. I had some fantastic music playing, and just like the gravity of the human condition just like crashed on me in an instant, and I just like cried like a baby for a few seconds, and it was just very, very weird but very profound. So
yeah, it sounds like a great opening.
Yeah. So for those reasons, and of course, just the increased tolerance to the cold, and I think also just when you put yourself in uncomfortable situations regularly, it helps you deal with all sorts of discomfort better. I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed in traffic or whatever it is. It's just kind of like you resort back to that nervous system neurological training you've done through the breathing that you do when you're in a cold shower or whatever, and it calms you down. It calms you down regardless of what the stress is. So that's why I've really dug it.
Beautiful. And I'd imagine like the cold shower, like I have a freezer on my back deck, like a chest freezer filled with water. And so a lot of times in the morning, I'm breaking ice off the surface of it. Always unplug your freezer. And this is probably not like a good thing to do, but it's something I do. It's because freezers aren't built for this. But like when I get in the cold plunge, that is physically and psychologically way more uncomfortable than traffic.
Absolutely.
So just like you're saying, like sitting in traffic, I'm now conditioned to like easily handle this discomfort. And I love I always say if there is only one ingredient for creating a successful life, it's regularly go into uncomfortable situations, whether it's saying yes to an opportunity or proactively creating an opportunity, but also daily practices, just like you're talking about, cold plunging, cold showers being one of the easiest, because I think the daily practices are the ones that allow us to actually become trained to go into the real discomfort in life rather than living a life of avoidance, which also helps us not sweat the small stuff like traffic. Yeah, this isn't redlining my ability to handle discomfort because, man, I've created a much bigger discomfort odometer for myself through the regular practice of embracing discomfort. So to me, successful people, and by the successful, not just like rich dudes, I'm talking about people with real inner fulfillment. They're not people who play it safe. They're people who embrace discomfort, and therefore they're willing to embrace discomfort. They do it often.
And to come full circle, that's how we got enlightened.
That's
it.
That is the story of our enlightenment.
Yeah. But I really couldn't agree more. This whole Western first world 70-degree dial tone life of constant cushions and blankets and whatever is just not satisfying to us as beings, physically, emotionally, psychically, none of it. And if I think that there's a massive correlation between that type of living and just every kind of disease, whether it's depression, physical inflammation, all of the above, whatever. I mean, all of these things I think have made us, like, at least our animal selves, very weak, very, very weak and a shade of what we could be. And the good news is you don't have to live the most uncomfortable, deprivation-based lifestyle ever to reverse that. It's like a little spoonful of medicine every day. That's really all it is. It's not constant discomfort and constant like asceticism or something like that.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. When we succumb to the self-preservation instinct that says worship safety, just feel safe, feel comfortable. Then you got the 70-degree Nerf world.
Yeah.
Well, then we take a look at what happens to animals who live in cages. What happens to orca whales who live in SeaWorld? They're sure as hell not happy. What keeps the body safe after a while can become a cage that kills the spirit. So I think like our root chakra craves safety. Our crown chakra craves adventure, which necessitates we leave the cage of safety that we've created for ourselves and then come back to it. You know, like we all want a nest. It's one of the human needs. We need safety and security. But the question is, do you step out of that safety and security? Do you metaphorically leave the home of your comfort, whether it's for an ice bath, for an adventure, a new business opportunity, a new creative endeavor, a new 1 hour doing something you've never done before? Or do you stay in the comfort zone all of the time? And if so, I believe that is us keeping ourselves in a self-induced prison.
Yeah. And on that note, man, now I'm thinking about that, whatever the random time you decided to do that first ultra spiritual video. You know, if you thought, oh, I'm not a comedian, I don't know, maybe, what if this isn't funny? I just don't want to put this out. You know, like imagine the dominoes that never would have fallen from that one idea, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And all those critical voices were talking, and that's what made it uncomfortable. And indeed, it was uncomfortable to put out the first video because there's the head talk of, what if nobody thinks this is funny? What if this is actually bad for my business? What if? And of course, imagining the worst case scenarios I can possibly imagine. But I did it anyway, and it wasn't comfortable. And I'm grateful that I embraced the discomfort.
I love it, man. I love it. I think there's an Aristotle quote about that exact thing, or maybe it's Plato, but it's, if you don't want to be criticized, don't ever do anything, is essentially what he says. And that's it. I mean, that's pretty much it. So
that's the recipe for avoiding criticism, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much, man. This has been fantastic. I want to respect your time for sure, but thanks for joining. Where can people find all things JP Sears?
Yeah, all things JP Sears. You can go to my website, awakenwithjp.com. That's got, of course, all my social media links. Actually, all my handles are Awaken with JP. So y'all can check me out there and connect with me there if you care to.
Fantastic, my friend. All right, let's wrap it up there. Thanks again for hanging out. I know you're a super busy man, so glad to get you on.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me on, Michael. You are a gentleman and a scholar, brother. It's been awesome talking with you.
Likewise, man. Likewise. What events do you have coming up? Anything in the near future? You said you're flying out soon, right?
Yes. There's going to San Diego tomorrow, and that's for a conference my lovely fiance is attending. And then from there, I'll be off to Dallas filming a commercial, so that's not really a public event. Then, let's see, middle of this month, I'll be at the Science and Non-Duality Conference doing some speaking, performing there.
I think Bruce Damer is going to be there too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That sounds familiar. I think Bruce and I were on stage together at the Symbiosis gathering.
Yeah, the Flat Earth thing. I remember that. Yeah. I've had Bruce on a bunch of times. We've become internet buddies. He's just like a completely unique mind. I just love that guy for so many reasons.
Yeah, Bruce is definitely incredible. Yeah, so lots of stuff happening.
Fantastic, man. Well, safe travels, continued success, and hope to chat again, man, or hopefully bump into each other sometime.
I would love that, Michael. Yeah, be in touch anytime, brother, and I look forward to when our paths intersect again.
All right. Likewise, man.
Cool, brother.
Have a great one.
See
Take care.
You too.
All right, bye.
awakenwithjp.com. How to Be Ultra Spiritual is the book. I don't know if he even said this, but I think there's a 10-level ascension guarantee. It's kind of like the Crest White Strip. how they guarantee a certain number of shades whiter. The book actually guarantees a certain amount of levels more woke. So you can't lose. That's it. Thank you so much for listening. There is actually some Grand Theft Auto level shit happening outside. If you listen closely, you might be able to hear a helicopter. I just heard sirens going for several minutes, and now I'm hearing a helicopter. So that's probably not good. So I am going to conclude this. But first, extra thanks to those supporting us via Patreon, checking us out on thirdeyedrops.com, and of course, those of you who have looked us up on Apple Podcasts and subscribed and reviewed. You are sensational. And so are all of you listening. Be fantastic. We will be back next week with Dr. Alexander Eben, the neuroscientist who had a near-death experience and wrote a best-selling book about it. I am geared to get that one out. Hope you dig it as well. See you then, woke folk.